Hi, it's Hans at happierman.com. Today's topic is, are you mentally ill? I kind of know a little bit more about this mental illness than I want to. I was involved with, someone who had the mental illness. That person nearly ruined my life. I mean, let's face it, my life was ruined by this mentally ill person. And this mentally ill person nearly ruined my children's lives. And it's taken a lot of effort on my part to kind of rebuild myself, rebuild my life, recreate it, go from really low to where I'm at now, which is at a happier man and doing lots of good things for myself and I think others too. But let's just get back to this idea, this question, are you mentally ill? Well, I've kind of put this mental illness worry on the back burner because I've dealt with this mentally ill person in my life. I've dealt with her decisively. She's out of my life. And I don't really think about her or worry about her. But now there's another person that's kind of in there, and I'm starting to think that this other person is mentally ill, and I kind of wanted to take the opportunity to explore this idea. Maybe somebody else could chime in and say what do they think about this. So the person is a female. She's younger. She's in her early 20s, and she's got herself addicted to a drug. Got very sick, nearly died from it. It's hard to tell whether she's off the drugs now or not. And I'm beginning to think that the drugs weren't really the problem, that the problem is really something else, that she's has some sort of mental illness, and taking the drugs is just another manifestation of the mental illness, of something you wouldn't do. I mean, would a normal person take tremendous amounts of extremely potent, harsh drugs for a long time? And it seems like a not mentally ill person would kind of know not to do that, doesn't it? You wouldn't think a normal person would just take heroin, for example, or Oxycontin. You wouldn't think does a mentally sane person drink a bottle of whiskey every day? I just don't think so. I think the overuse of drugs, alcohol, whatever, would indicate that the person is mentally ill, that they don't have a grasp on reality. So there's that. And I think the studies probably bear me out that mentally ill people probably tend to overdo the drugs more than people who aren't mentally ill. The traffic is weird here today. So, but what else? Well, usually people are trying to better their life and kind of moving ahead with it, kind of little by little, doing the right thing day by day to help themselves. But I think you'll find that a mentally ill person wouldn't be doing this, right? They would just kind of be languishing, not really doing that much. A lot of grand ideas with no real initiative to do anything. So yeah, that kind of, I'm starting to think this way, that's a big problem with a mentally ill person. They're able to just live all day, every day, without really doing anything. They don't seem to mind having other people just take care of them. Whereas a normal person who isn't mentally ill kind of doesn't do that. They kind of get busy taking care of themselves. They don't like to be a burden. Whereas a mentally ill person, they don't seem to know, they don't seem to care that they're a massive burden on others and a massive distraction and a problem. So I think that's kind of it, and they like to create drama and problems and chaos for no real reason. And I would argue there's never a reason for drama and chaos and problems. But anyway, I'm a happier man after all. What else could be considered a mental illness? Thinking on a grand scale, thinking that, you have to, if you're going to get a job, it's got to be this great job that changes the world, and that's the only thing that matters. I think you'll find that people who think this way are pretty much mentally ill beyond much hope, until they get that kind of thoughts out of their system. It's kind of like a foolish thinking, It's almost like you're like a queen or a pharaoh or an emperor or a king, and that's how that it's a weird thinking. Most normal people have no real need to do something so grand. Maybe you just start off where you're at on the small scale, and if eventually you work yourself up into something grand, well, that's all fine, right? But maybe you don't start out that way. You start off with where you're at, and you build from there. So yeah, I'm really starting to think that that's probably the cause of the problem is this mental illness problem. And I think that's probably where a lot of problems with the people in the world you find they're probably mentally ill of some type, and until I don't really have any answers other than recognizing it and trying to avoid getting pulled down into their and how they operate, how they are will tend to pull you down. So you can't let this happen. Okay. So anyway, it's a very tough subject. It's a very complicated issue, and a problem with the mentally ill people is they don't have a sign on them that says I'm mentally ill. They just seem normal most of the time, and then you'll have to be looking for these clues to tell you whether they're mentally ill or not. And the illness may lay dormant for a while, like any other illness. It may not show up until it shows up, or it may be just kind of quirky. The person may be eccentric, quirky, a little weird, and all of those things seem to be fine. What I am saying is, with a mentally ill person, if you're dealing with that type of a person and they're not really much of a burden and they're kind of taking care of themselves, well, then you wouldn't worry about that mental illness. It's only when they're so mentally ill that taking care of them is an enormous burden and strain on you will you understand that it's too much. It's too much for you to bear. So anyway, give that idea some thought. Maybe I'll explore this more in a different video or a different article. But for now, I would start questioning, the people. If you're dealing with a person who's really difficult, start asking these questions to yourself about them, and do a little research on this, because you may find that's probably the reason that they're so difficult. So anyway, give that idea some thought. All for now.